Now we move to our first motion. We have a taker here already at the front. Motion number 6 on the agenda, the first motion for today, developing an ALBA population strategy for an independent Scotland, to be proposed by Gavin Bain and seconded by David Maitland. Welcome, Gavin Bain.
Population, demographics, immigration, immigration. These aren't just technical issues, they're existential ones. And yet too often these topics are handled like live grenades. Too sensitive to touch, too controversial to lead on, so politicians tiptoe, parties hedge, and the public are left in the dark, or worse, fed myths by those who weaponise silence. I believe we have the people with the capability, experience and outlook in the interests of Scotland at our core to debate these topics like adults. These are complex and sensitive issues. That is why I propose forming a working group to work through these policies with the care they deserve. The truth is, Scotland is facing a demographic crisis. Our birth rate is too low, our young people are leaving, our rural communities are thinning out. Meanwhile, immigration policies we don't control are decided at Westminster, treating Scotland as an afterthought. The Scottish Government asked for the powers over immigration to be devolved to meet our specific needs, and they were refused. To fully address these issues needs the powers of a normal, independent country.
This is a very, very important, it's the most important motion that we've got. And provided, of course, we get the bravery to get it right. We've got the bravery to deliver what the electorate want and not dictate what the electorate want, as the other parties do. We all have the opportunity, this is a working group, we all have the opportunity and the responsibility to take part in that working group. It's a 6-month process and they'll report back at the next conference, and that's where we'll have the discussion and the debate that we so need. Because this policy could have the effect of being the silver bullet that we've all been looking for to make that breakthrough that we've been looking for so long. But we have to be brave. We have to have the bravery to take those headlines that we will inevitably get, that some will see as negative, but the vast majority of the electorate will see as very, very positive. We have to have the bravery as members to make those decisions. Now, those who have been elected throughout this conference, they've stood up, the votes have been counted, they've been elected, but now they must step up and make those brave decisions that some will see as negative. But on the doorsteps between now and the election day in 2026, it's the #1 subject that we'll hear on every single doorstep. So it's essential that we get it right.
Now, Scandinavian countries too have low fertility. The traditional wisdom that only a shortage of houses, money and flexible employment are deterring people from starting or growing their families no longer holds. Some folk clearly are being held back by these considerations, reaching financial stability too late for their biological clock, which peaks before 30 rather than after 45. So addressing these issues should be part of our policy. ALBA's 5-point plan for families and existing housing strategy are already a good start. But research increasingly shows that many people decide about children long before adulthood based on other factors: their confidence in the future, the social and emotional support they can imagine themselves having, both formal and informal, what appreciation society has for the role of parents, what world and what sort of country they believe will be there for their children. At a personal level, young people are wrestling with psychological minefields rather than a demographic time bomb. These are all areas which Scotland, and particularly independent Scotland, can address as well as anyone. In embodying a fair, supportive and inclusive society, we could lead Europe to become a nation where personal decisions about whether to have children or not, if so, how many and when, are all genuine choices and not foregone conclusions. In light of this, can I encourage you all to support the motion and contribute your ideas about our future as a people? Thank you.
As has been noted, population growth across most of the Western world has been falling for many reasons of which I do not have time to go into. And we should accept that having less people in Scotland is not necessarily a bad thing. It means there is less carbon footfall, it has less impact on the environment, it needs less resources, needs to grow less food. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But the reason that I'm going to say that we should have the remit back is because, as the last speaker said, we should all take part and contribute to any working group, National Assembly that's set up to discuss this. But the problem with this resolution is that it predetermines what the working group should deal with. It predetermines that we should accept a free travel area with Ireland and remaining UK as part of immigration policy. I presume that means post-independence. That raises a question: do we see our future in a free travel area with England or in a free travel area with Europe? Because I do not believe we can have both. We will have to choose whether we wish to be really European or with England. So I would say that that is something that should be debated by the working group, not something that is taken at its face value as an assumption.
A couple of years ago, I believe I haven't faced such discussions. We like to think that a trait of racism, of intolerance, is something completely alien to Scotland. And I agree. That's something which we could call the British disease, because racism is imprinted in the United Kingdom as a state, as an imperialist state. Scotland was, and Scotland is, and Scotland will be always different, open, inclusive, and accepting all the differences of the people coming here to live in the land of the free.
Because it ties in so many critical issues about creating a vibrant and prosperous Scotland, issues that only independence can address, and independence has never been so badly needed, and Scotland's future depends on our success in 2026. Depopulation, it's the scourge of the Highlands. 2,500 people, young people, leave every year and many don't come back, and that's a story echoed around so many parts of Scotland. So we need to create jobs and grow our economy, and of course when we do that, we need to build more houses, more schools, doctor surgeries, dentist practices, and the list goes on. And just on that, if Taz permits me a bit of time here, I just wanted to mention Alex. One of the things Alex did and was very good at, as we know, was just listening to people and understanding the issues for every single person, every single family, every single town, and latching on to that. And he put into the National Manifesto last year the creation of a dental school to teach graduates in the Highlands. And of course, the valuable lesson I've learned from that over the past few months and pushing that forward is that a party doesn't need to be in power. It doesn't need to have elected officials to go out and make a difference in their communities. So in the last 6 months in Alex's legacy, we've enrolled the General Dental Council, we've got the local enterprise agency, the local university, we've got head of NHS dentistry in the Highlands. We've even reached out to MP down in the Senate that's doing a similar thing in Wales, who's lending their advice and support. And we've now found a partner university that's willing to kick this off in the Highlands. It taking just 2 years to create a syllabus, but months if you find a partner. So there must be other issues like that around the whole of Scotland that we as ALBA could take on and follow our past leaders' vision in finding things that we can do to make an impact in the community. So not directly related to the motion, but clearly linked to setting up the kind of infrastructure that a growing population is going to need.
What David said is absolutely vital. This is the single issue, the make or break issue for our party. Now, I say that from a background in working in homelessness, being a housing campaigner all my adult life, and doing a lot of canvassing in Glasgow. Now, I just want to interject a few facts. Glasgow is the only asylum dispersal centre in Scotland. So it's the only place that the UK government sends asylum seekers. Now, in 2012, the Scottish government removed local connection as a way in which a local authority could turn away someone who was homeless. Nowhere else in the United Kingdom is that true. So in no other asylum dispersal centre city is that true. So we now have a situation where you have people who have absolute right to stay in the United Kingdom, proven refugees, who then come to Glasgow to make a homeless application. And there are no other dispersal centres in Scotland, so you have a concentration of asylum seekers and refugees. So because of the foolhardy decisions of the past 2 decades, we lost about 35,000 social homes in our largest city. So there is already a housing and homelessness emergency, as declared by the Council, as declared by the Scottish Government, and at the meantime, we are demolishing more homes than we are building. Right? So if you add these two facts together, what you have, and I think that the phrase population strategy is a much better way of framing it than immigration, because you have a concentration of asylum seekers and refugees into housing schemes. And it creates just in one city, not across Scotland. So it creates a false sense that there is a mass of immigration, because people are parochial. They don't see beyond their neighbourhood. And as a result, we've got Reform polling at 18% in Glasgow. So we need to have an answer to that, an answer that speaks to people's right to a house if they're a citizen, but also speaks to people's sense of control of their own neighbourhoods and destiny, because you have people languishing on waiting lists in homes that are unfit for human habitation, often for decades, and then they find, and this is the situation at the moment, there are more refugees who make Section 5 homeless referrals in Glasgow now than there are white Scottish people. Now, you can imagine the impact that has. So we really need to have a clear focus on this.
I want to tell you a story or all our yesterdays. I wanted to speak particularly about my time on a remote island in the Orkneys. Any here from the Orkneys? Well, there should be. I must do something about that. I went there into the completely unknown. I was the so-called head teacher. Read for that general dog's body, because there was no one else but me in charge of 12 children, age 5 through to secondary school. Now, there is no school. The population has gone from 49 down to 17. Me, I returned to the island and I nearly greet. It is awful. There are farms with livable inn houses, but there's no school, so young people are not attracted to the island because they have to send their preschool, by the way, to the next island. If it's blowing any harder than a 4/6 from the northwest, they don't get to school.
Council tax is an outdated, regressive form of taxation which does not take into account the income of the people who live in a property or their ability to pay. ALBA have consistently campaigned for a council tax freeze and have been successful in recent years in forcing Hamza Yousaf's government to stick to that position. However, a freeze is merely a sticking plaster, which in truth is unsustainable. Councils are strapped for cash and there is an urgent need to find a suitable alternative. I believe to date it is ALBA member Tommy Sheridan, when he was an MSP, to be the only MSP to bring forward a motion to Parliament seeking to change the council tax. I hope there will be an ALBA MSP at the next election that will be able to do that. We are witnessing this year the largest increase in council tax in over 20 years. The highest increases is in Falkirk at 15.6%. Other increases, Aberdeenshire, North Lanarkshire, the Borders, are increasing by 10%. Indeed, every single Scottish council is seeing an increase this year. We need to leave this conference today being able to say that at a time when other parties are intent on punishing hard-working families, the ALBA party are going to scrap the unfair council tax. Thank you.
Our councils are a breaking point. This year across Scotland, local authorities were forced to raise council tax by record amounts, not because they want to do, but because they have no other choice. We're working under massive financial pressure and it's only getting worse. In context, on average, a council tax only makes up about 17% of each council budget. Even in Edinburgh, it's only 26%. So the bulk of funding is coming from Scottish Government and more of it is ring-fenced. That means councils are told exactly how to spend it, leaving them with less flexibility and less control over decisions that affect their own communities. This motion is calling that out. It recognises that councils are underfunded and increasingly powerless and that this model is unsustainable. It calls for a freeze in council tax to stop the burden falling even harder on families that are already struggling with the cost of living. But more importantly, it calls for real reform. A fairer system, one with those in the broadest shoulders contribute the most and services are funded properly. It also asks ALBA to lead the way by creating a National Assembly and a working group to fully develop a full policy on local government funding, a policy we'll debate and vote on together at our next conference.
Because the truth is, the SNP have been committed to reforming the council tax for the past 20 years and have done nothing, other than occasionally freeze it for political ends, leading to the situation, as Chris Cullen indicated, that actually councils are cash-strapped and squeezed all over Scotland and indeed all over England as well. The system is broken. It needs to be changed. We should be the one putting forward the radical changes required. And we don't need to do that much work because actually Tommy Sheridan and I and others worked on this for the Scottish Socialist Party, and Tommy put forward a bill. It was, of course, voted down by Labour and by the Tories and by the Liberals. I think the SNP were vaguely sympathetic, but it didn't get through. But it's called the Scottish Service Tax, and it was worked out by Mike Danson and colleagues at the University of West of Scotland. It's highly worked out by sophisticated economic projections. It's passed and approved, would you believe, by the Inland Revenue, who said it could be operated, and it substitutes basically an income tax supplement for local government finance instead of the outdated and unequal council tax system which exists. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The work has been done already, so we should certainly feed this into the National Assembly, but we should get it forward and make it a key policy for our 2026 election.
Well, let's be honest and look at these things. What does regressive mean? Somebody on that £1,000 council tax band pays a higher percentage of their salary, wages, whatever you want to call it, than the person in the £3,200 bracket. That is regressive, and these people can't afford to keep paying for it. Ring fencing gets spat out by lots of elected members. What does ring fencing actually mean? Ring fencing, and we hope to be part of an independence government after 26, when we will be part of a coalition pushing for it. And we'll be elected on a manifesto where we have policies and procedures that we want to adopt. And if we say to a local authority, we're giving you, and I'll give you an example, we're giving you X amount of money and you have to spend it on freezing the council tax. That money is fully funded for the council, but we expect you to freeze the council tax. What happened the last time? We had Labour councils coming back and saying, we want that money to freeze the council tax, but we also want the ability to raise the council tax. Come on, you can't get money to do something that a government wants and then say, but we also want that money and the ability to raise it.
Now in Dundee, and I was part of this as an administration councillor, and I'm still proud of the part I played, the small part I played in things like the V&A coming to Dundee, the shiny new train station, the redevelopment of the waterfront. It looks great. But I'll tell you, you go 5 minutes in your car up to the Lochee ward that I represented and still live in today, and they don't give two hoots about the V&A and the shiny new train station because it's not for them. The levels of poverty and deprivation that still exist in those communities is astonishing and criminal, and yet they're still having to pay the same council tax as everyone else.
So on the subject of home birth, I would like to invite the proposer, Shannon Donoghue, to be followed by the seconder, Corey Wilson. Welcome, Shannon.
I want to share my own experience of home birth, not to say that it's the right choice for everyone, but to say that it should be a choice. And right now, too many expectant parents are not given the information they need to make that choice for themselves. When I gave birth at home to my second child, I was surrounded by my family. The atmosphere was calm, familiar and reassuring. My son Ronnie was even in the birthing pool with me at the beginning, and he was there immediately after his sister was born, welcoming her in a way that just wouldn't have been possible in a hospital setting. There was no rush, no unnecessary clinical interventions, just trust, support and the knowledge that I was in control of my own experience. I believe that being in a relaxed, non-clinical environment helped my recovery. Without the stress and interruptions of a hospital settings, I was able to rest, bond with my baby and heal more naturally.
And I've no doubt that my daughter's recovery was helped by the fact that she was able to rest and heal in her own home, with her newborn in her arms, and without that disruption of hospital routines. What's more, as an added benefit of home birth, there was one that not many people think about, and as somebody who has researched their family tree extensively, her birth certificate now says that she was born at her home address. That's something special. A little piece of history tied to where she took her first breath. But I know now that home birth is still not spoken about enough. Too many expectant mums don't realise it's an option. I often ask pregnant mums when I speak to them if they're having a home birth, and they've never heard of it, or they look at me as if I'm daft. But let alone receive any information, they need to make an informed choice. There's an argument around safety, but you need that information to make that informed choice about safety. There's an argument around funding, but as Shannon said, the NHS is supposed to be patient-led, and that can only happen if you have choice. When it comes to money, you could argue one midwife in your home versus a team in the hospital, plus the other hospital services, the cleaners, the cooks, the heating, the building maintenance, etc. This isn't about saying home birth is for everyone, and that's okay, but it should be an informed choice that every parent gets to make. So today I would urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've had home births, so I thought I should definitely speak on this. And anyone that's sort of spoken about birth stories or often can be traumatising, like we have heard, but I certainly have had personal experience of very positive home birth experiences. My youngest son was born at home, and what the previous speaker spoke of is certainly true in terms of having that positive experience of being in our own home, the midwife coming out, and at the later stages a second midwife, being there, it was such a more positive experience than the experience in hospital. There's certainly many women I've spoken to that have had very traumatic experiences in hospital, in postnatal wards, and certainly in terms of the impacts of on the siblings who were then able to come and meet their baby brother just after he was born was such a wonderful experience and really cemented their bonds, and it was a lovely, beautiful family experience that we were all able to then be in our own rooms, our own beds at that night, and it would certainly promote it to other mothers, other low-risk mothers like me that were able to have really positive experiences.
It's with a bit of heavy heart that I'm speaking against the motion just now. I'd like to thank Sharon and Corey for bringing their positive birth experience to conference. I actually fully support the choice of women to birth at a place of their choice with appropriately trained personnel, but currently I don't think it's maybe the best choice to make due to the state of our NHS, and that's, you know, that's another debate. I'm a retired midwife, I'm a nurse, I was an advanced midwife practitioner, so I did some jobs that doctors would do, like forceps deliveries, voluntary deliveries, etc. I've worked in community settings, I've attended many home births, I've worked in labour wards, busy labour wards. I've attended people in community settings, community midwifery units, home births, and in labour wards and in theatres. There is no guarantee where you have your baby that everything will go well. There's certainly no guarantee going into hospital that you will have a normal, healthy baby at the end of it. In fact, I've dealt with mothers that have died, which is the most devastating thing that you can go through in midwifery. I've worked out in the middle of Australia with the Flying Doctor Service. I've attended births in creeks with Aboriginals who don't speak my language and sign language to get their baby delivered. We didn't know the gestation because if you asked them when their last period was, it was either before Christmas or after Christmas. So a lot of it was guesswork. I've delivered babies on planes coming back to Alice Springs. So I've had a good experience. I would always support home births, but the current system is not equitable, and people should be given the choice, and the current directions are that everyone is given the choice, but services have been streamlined so much that at first booking appointments, women are given so much information that home birth should be mentioned, it might be mentioned. It's most husbands that are freaked out about this to start with, so there certainly needs to be more education.
Well, thanks very much, Sharon, for bringing up this hot topic, you know, in terms of the whole issue of informed consent. And I'm not going to say too much except to say that I'm so glad to hear it spoken about today in this context. Now, I'm not an obstetrician. The only qualification I have is my mum's 92-year-old midwife, okay? But I'd have to say there's a fundamental principle involved here, and one which the ALBA party would do well to look towards in the year coming, and that's informed consent. Now, there are many areas of medical practice these days where people are not given informed consent, and that just is not reserved to obstetrics. But I think it is absolutely fundamental that a woman, having been apprised of all the facts with her family, should be able to choose where she allows a new person to enter this world.
Water is life, but not all water is equal. Our water ionizer restructures and alkalizes water for optimum hydration and detoxification, recreating the planet's ultimate water sources, found in lightning-struck lakes and newly melted icebergs. H2 Pure Source. Change your water. Change your life.
Now we move to another exceptionally important motion, number 9 on surrogacy, to be proposed by Anne Hall and initially to be seconded by Ash Regan, MSP, who unfortunately can't be with us today, but will be seconded by instead Kirsty Fraser, our newly elected National Women's Convener. So first of all, Anne Hall. Oh, you're here. Welcome, Anne.
The EU Anti-Trafficking Directive now explicitly identifies the exploitation of surrogacy as a form of human trafficking. Finally, let's turn our attention to the mother-child bond. Even if a woman does not use her own egg, she is still related to the baby. She is still its mother. Her body nourishes and grows a baby for 9 months. Her womb determines the biological development, and their cells interchangeably mingle. Pregnancy is not passive. It forges a lifelong bond, an emotional and physical connection between mother and child that should never be denied. The only person a baby wants and needs at birth is the woman who carried him or her. All pregnant mothers know this. Hospitals bend over backwards to ensure mum gets skin-on-skin contact immediately after delivery. This regulates the baby's heartbeat and breathing. It is vital for the bonding process and vital to the child's well-being. Yet in surrogacy, the baby is intentionally taken away from its mother to prevent this bonding. Surrogacy creates women and children whose needs are somehow less than the wants of the purchasers. They are predominantly poorer women whose lives are deemed worth the risk, and children whose vital need to bond with the woman who carried them and gave them birth is somehow deemed unnecessary in their case, but vital to all of us. The magnified health risks for the mothers, the long-term consequences for the child, and the potential for exploitation of both means that surrogacy falls far below the standard of human rights we should expect for women and children. Conference, please support this motion.
Babies are not commodities either. They are human beings with rights, not products created on demand. I was appalled to see the Scottish Government recently advertise for egg donors, offering cash, targeting young women and failing to mention any real risks. This is not empowerment. It's a failure of duty, of ethics and of care. Conference, let us be the party that defends every woman's right to dignity, safety and sovereignty of her own body. Let us say clearly, Scotland is not for sale, women are not for sale, babies are not for sale. Stand for human rights, stand for women, stand up for children, support this motion. Thank you.
Conference, I want to urge you today to vote against this motion. It is core. It seeks to dictate what women can and cannot do with our own bodies. And it's an approach that should deeply concern any party committed to women's rights. The motion paints surrogacy as inherently exploitative, but it ignores a crucial fact. Scotland already operates under some of the strictest surrogacy laws in the world, where commercial surrogacy is illegal. Payments beyond reasonable expenses are not allowed, and surrogacy agreements are not legally enforceable, meaning that no woman can be compelled to continue a pregnancy if she doesn't wish to. Parental orders must be granted by a court after birth, which does ensure legal oversight. And these protections exist precisely to prevent the exploitation that the motion warns about. To the argument about potential harm to mothers and babies, specifically in cases where children are separated from their birth mothers at the point of birth, I agree it does need careful consideration, but it's important to acknowledge that while surrogacy involves complex emotions and can present challenges, there is little evidence to suggest
that surrogacy inherently harms mother or child when proper legal and ethical safeguards are in place.
Like another topic that's coming up later, assisted dying, I used to think this is a great idea. In fact, 20 years ago, my daughter, who had a young age, we had a pact. If she couldn't have children, I would do that for her. Times have moved on, and I've looked into the issue of surrogacy a fair bit. You've got the really nice altruistic end, but even then, I know some families, a woman who had a child for her sister-in-law, she's now been cut off from that relationship. So even at the nicer end, it can be fraught with difficulties. But the more you look at the commercialisation of women's bodies, it's truly horrific. I mean, there's folk trafficked into this, their eggs are harvested, and ultimately, at the end of the day, although my heart goes out to people who can't have children, it must be a dreadful pain and a heartache. Ultimately, it's the right of that child. So to be born of a child where your egg, your mother, is not even regarded as being able to gestate that because they transplant it into another woman, thus reducing that contact, that bond. Anyway, we've had some fantastic speakers on that earlier.
Good afternoon, conference. I'm speaking against this motion today, not necessarily because I disagree with the ethos and intention behind it, but I fundamentally believe this is a matter of conscience, something that a political party shouldn't mandate its members, elected or otherwise, to support. We will all have our different views, whether it be on abortion, equal marriage, but no party, rightly in my view, mandates their members. And so I think the motion, I would have been happy with it until its final 3 words where it commits to making surrogacy illegal. I think, like I said, this is a matter of conscience, and please reject the motion. Thank you.
All those in favour of the motion, please raise your cards. And of course, people can change their minds when we do this. That happened last time. Can they lower their cards there? Yep, lower your cards. And all those against, please raise your cards. Okay, so all those in favour of the motion this time round were 50, and those against were 53. The motion falls. Thank you. And with that, we come to the end of this week's show, and thank you so much for the encouraging comments on the conference and indeed the show in general. Please do keep them coming in. Next week, we'll have our final instalment of the ALBA Party Conference, and then I'm going to move to introducing you to some of the National Executive Committee members and our national conveners. The group will be steering forward the ALBA Party to electoral success in 2026 and bringing you some very important statistics in terms of how we need to vote to maximise the independence vote in upcoming shows. And of course, I have many more guests coming on who are going to be paying tribute to the late, great Alex Salmond. So stay tuned to Scotland Speaks. Thank you so much for your support. Enjoy the weather, take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week.